At 2:15 a.m. on June 8, 1944, Private First Class Vernon Hayes crouched in a Norman barn loft, watching 9 Wehrmacht soldiers advance through the darkness below. Standard doctrine said hold fire until they passed. Wait for dawn. Wait for support. Vernon Hayes didn't wait. In the next 4 minutes, he killed all 9 men without firing a shot. The German company spent 3 days searching for the sniper nest that didn't exist. Hayes was 34 years old, too old for combat infantry by Army standards, but the 82nd Airborne needed bodies after D-Day. What they got was a Kansas wheat farmer who knew more about gravity and angles than most engineering students. Back in Salina, Hayes had spent 18 summers loading hay bales into barn lofts, not the romantic farming of photographs, the real work, 100-degree heat, chaff in your throat, splinters under every fingernail, the work that taught you how objects fall, how weight shifts, how a bale dropped from 20 feet can crush a man's skull if he's standing in the wrong spot. Hayes had learned to drop bales down wooden chutes built into barn floors, smooth channels worn by decades of use, designed to send hay from loft to ground level without climbing down ladders. Every Kansas barn had them. Drop a bale at the top, gravity did the rest. Simple physics that kept farmers from breaking their backs. Hayes had dropped 10,000 bales through those chutes. He knew the sound a 60-pound bundle made hitting packed earth, knew how fast it fell, knew the margin of error was about 6 inches. That knowledge seemed useless on June 6th when Hayes jumped into Normandy at 1:20 a.m. His stick scattered across 3 miles of hedgerow country. He landed in a flooded field, cut himself free from his chute, and spent 4 hours wading through waist-deep water trying to find his unit. Found them at dawn. What was left of them? 47 men jumped. 19 made it to the assembly point. The bocage country of Normandy was farmers' land, but nothing like Kansas. These were medieval fields separated by earthen walls topped with hedgerows so thick you couldn't see through them. Each field a fortress, each hedgerow a trench line. The Germans had been preparing these positions for 4 years. They knew every stone wall, every tree line, every barn. The 82nd Airborne was trying to learn the terrain while people shot at them. By June 7th, Hayes's company was down to 31 men. They'd taken the village of Santa Mare Igles but couldn't advance. German patrols owned the night. 9-man squads that moved through the darkness like wolves. They knew the land. They had the maps. They killed anyone they found after midnight. That's when Tommy Eugene Morrison died. Eugene Morrison was from Pittsburgh, 22 years old. Worked in his father's butcher shop before the war. He and Hayes had jumped together, landed in the same flooded field, helped each other to the assembly point. They'd known each other for 8 hours. In combat, 8 hours made you brothers. June 7th, 11:40 p.m. Hayes and Eugene Morrison were on perimeter watch in a farmhouse basement. Eugene Morrison went upstairs to check the road. Hayes heard boots on floorboards above. German boots. Different rhythm than American, harder heels. Then Eugene Morrison's voice trying to surrender in broken German. Then the MP40 burst, 17 rounds. Hayes counted everyone. He found Eugene Morrison at the base of the stairs. The bullet impacts had thrown him backward. His helmet was gone. Blood pooled on limestone floor. The smell of cordite mixed with something metallic and sweet. Hayes tried to stop the bleeding, but Eugene Morrison's eyes were already fixed, staring at the ceiling, not seeing anything. His hands were still warm. That was the worst part. How warm dead men stayed for the first few minutes. How the body didn't understand it was finished. The German patrol was gone before Hayes could react. Standard doctrine was right. 9 men in the dark with automatic weapons. 1 rifleman in a basement. The math didn't work. But Hayes kept seeing Eugene Morrison's face, kept smelling that mixture of cordite and blood, kept feeling how warm the hands were. The next day, Hayes' squad moved to a farm complex 2 miles west of Sainte-Mère-Église. Company commander wanted observation posts in the barn lofts. Good fields of fire. Hayes climbed the ladder and found himself in a Norman hay barn that looked wrong. Too new. Too empty. The floor was concrete, not wood. But there, in the northwest corner, was a wooden chute, 8 inches wide, dropped straight through the floor to ground level. The Normans used the same system as Kansas farmers. Drop hay bales down. Save your back. Hayes looked at that chute for a long time. The wood was smooth from decades of friction. The hole went straight down 23 feet. He could see moonlight at the bottom. The barn's ground floor was stone, not packed earth like Kansas. Stone. He thought about bales falling, thought about the sound they made, thought about 60 pounds of compressed hay hitting limestone from 20 feet up. Then he thought about other objects that weighed 60 pounds. A rucksack full of rocks, an ammo can packed with scrap metal, a sandbag filled with broken bricks. That night, Hayes couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Eugene Morrison at the base of those stairs, kept thinking about the German patrol that had killed him and walked away, kept thinking about that wooden chute and the stone floor below. The smell of gun oil on his rifle reminded him of the blood smell. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Eugene Morrison's fixed stare, heard his boots scraping on limestone, felt the warmth leaving his hands. At 3 a.m., Hayes gave up on sleep. He climbed back to the barn loft with his entrenching tool and started digging. Not outside. Inside. He pried up the concrete around the chute opening. The floor was only 2 inches thick, poured over wooden planks. Beneath that was the original barn structure. Hayes worked quietly. No light. Just hands and the small shovel. His fingers cramped. Concrete dust mixed with old hay chaff. He could taste it. Same taste as Kansas wheat fields in August. By 5 a.m., he'd widened the chute opening from 8 inches to 14 inches, wide enough for a sandbag. He used his bayonet to smooth the edges, making the wood slick. No friction. Just a straight drop to stone floor below. Then he gathered materials. 3 sandbags from the perimeter defenses, filled them with broken bricks from a collapsed wall. Each bag weighed between 55 and 65 pounds, about the same as a hay bale. He stacked them next to the chute. Hayes sat in the loft testing the math. The bags would fall at 32 feet per second squared. Acceleration due to gravity. From 23 feet up, they'd hit terminal velocity around 24 miles per hour. Not bullet speed, but enough. A 60-pound object moving at 24 miles per hour carried about 280 foot-pounds of energy. Same as a .44 Magnum round. More than enough to crack a human skull if it hit crown first. If. The problem was aiming. Gravity pulled straight down. The target would be moving. The margin of error was maybe 6 inches. Miss by a foot, you had a dead sandbag and very alert Germans. But Hayes had dropped 10,000 hay bales through chutes in Kansas. He knew the timing, knew the sound of boots on stone, knew how long it took a man to walk 3 steps. He'd been dropping objects through vertical spaces since he was 16 years old. At 1:30 a.m. on June 8th, Hayes heard movement outside. He'd been in the loft for 6 hours. No light, no movement, just waiting. The sound was boots on gravel, then boots on stone as someone entered the barn's ground floor. Hayes looked through a crack in the floorboards, saw shapes moving in darkness below, counted them. 9 men. German patrol, same size as the one that killed Eugene Morrison. They were using the barn as a checkpoint, standard sweep pattern. They'd been through twice already that night. This was the third pass. Hayes knew their schedule now, knew they'd spread out through the ground floor, check the corners, hold position for 10 minutes, then move on. That's what doctrine said. That's what kept them alive. Hayes picked up the first sandbag. It was heavy in his hands. The canvas was rough. His palms were sweating despite the cold. Below, he heard a German voice giving quiet orders. Heard boots shuffling into position. Heard someone light a cigarette. The smell of tobacco smoke drifted up through the floorboards. Hayes positioned himself over the chute. He could see directly down through the 14-inch opening. Could see the stone floor below. Could see a Wehrmacht helmet directly beneath the hole. The soldier was standing in the kill slot, exactly where Hayes needed him, not moving, just standing there checking his weapon. Hayes didn't hesitate. He dropped the sandbag. It fell for exactly 1.2 seconds. Hayes heard it hit. The sound wasn't loud, just a thud like a mallet hitting a side of beef. Then the clatter of a rifle dropping on stone. Then nothing. The other 8 Germans didn't react immediately, probably thought their companion had dropped his weapon, fumbled something in the dark. Hayes was already moving to the second sandbag. Below, someone called out a name. Muller? No response. Footsteps. Someone walking toward the spot where Muller had been standing. Hayes watched through the crack in the floorboards, watched the second German step into the kill slot, looking down at his fallen comrade. Hayes dropped the second bag. Another thud. Another rifle clattering on stone. This time, the remaining Germans understood something was wrong. Hayes heard urgent voices, heard boots scraping as men ran for the door. But they were confused, didn't know which direction the threat was coming from. Some ran for the exit. Others took cover behind hay bales stacked along the walls. 2 men crouched in opposite corners. Hayes worked the angles. The chute only covered a 14-inch circle of floor space. But German patrol doctrine was predictable. When taking fire, they'd find cover, then call for their squad leader. The squad leader would assess, then give orders. That assessment took about 15 seconds. During those 15 seconds, the squad leader would be standing still. Hayes waited, counted to 12, heard a voice below giving orders, calm voice, squad leader. Hayes looked through the crack, found the helmet. The man was standing 8 feet from the chute opening, too far, but he was moving. Walking toward the 2 dead men to assess the situation, walking on a predictable line. Hayes did the math. The man was walking at about 3 feet per second. The bag would fall for 1.2 seconds. That meant Hayes needed to drop it when the target was 3.6 feet away from the kill slot. He watched, waited, watched the helmet move into position, dropped the third bag. This one missed. Hit stone 2 feet from the target. The impact was loud. The bag split. Bricks scattered across the floor. But the sound finally told the Germans what was happening. Someone was dropping objects on them from above. Hayes heard shouting, heard return fire, MP-40 spraying the ceiling. Bullets punched through wooden planks 6 feet from where Hayes was crouching. Splinters rained down. The noise was deafening in the enclosed space. Hayes pressed flat against the loft floor, smelled old hay and gun smoke. His ears rang, but the Germans had made a mistake. They'd revealed their positions. Hayes counted muzzle flashes, 6 shooters, all aimed at the wrong section of ceiling. all standing still while they fired. Hayes had 3 more sandbags. He'd prepared 6 total. Belt and suspenders. His father's rule. Bring twice what you need. He crawled to the chute. Slower now. The Germans were watching for movement. Hayes grabbed the 4th bag and waited. The shooting stopped. Magazines empty. In the silence, he heard frantic reloading, heard someone shouting orders to retreat, heard boots running for the door. Hayes moved to the crack in the floorboards, saw 3 men running for the exit, saw 3 more taking cover behind hay bales, saw 1 man standing in the open, looking up at the ceiling, trying to identify the threat source. That man was 10 feet from the kill slot, but he was moving toward it, slow, cautious steps, weapon raised. Hayes did the calculation, same math as before. Drop when the target was 4 feet away. He watched the helmet, watched the careful approach. The German was professional, moving slowly, weapon up, eyes scanning, good discipline. Would have made a fine soldier if he'd been born somewhere else. Hayes felt nothing about that, just waited, watched. Dropped the 4th bag when the helmet reached the right position, direct hit. The German went down without a sound. His weapon hit stone with a bell-like ring. The other 5 Germans opened fire again, but they were panicking now, firing wild, burning through ammunition. 1 man screamed orders to retreat. 2 men ran for the door, made it outside. Hayes heard their boots on gravel running fast, disappearing into darkness. 3 men left inside. They'd found cover behind thick hay bales along the east wall. Good cover. The sandbags couldn't reach them there, but they couldn't stay there either. Standard German patrol doctrine said reinforce or retreat. No patrol stayed pinned down. If they stayed, the entire company would come looking. If they retreated, they'd report a sniper in the barn loft. Either way, Hayes had maybe 5 minutes before this barn became the most dangerous place in Normandy. Hayes made a decision that violated every rule he'd been taught. He'd been trained to maintain concealment. Never reveal your position. But the 3 Germans behind the hay bales couldn't see the ceiling from their angle, couldn't see the chute opening. They thought they were under fire from a barn window, from ground level. Hayes picked up his M1 Garand. He'd never fired it from the loft. The Germans didn't know anyone was up there. But if he could draw them out from behind cover, get them moving through the kill slot, he had 2 sandbags left. He fired 3 rounds through the floorboards, aiming at nothing. Just noise. Just muzzle flash from the wrong angle. The 3 Germans reacted exactly as Hayes predicted. They thought the sniper had changed positions. They broke cover, moved to new positions. 1 man ran directly under the chute opening. Hayes dropped the 5th sandbag while holding his rifle. One-handed drop. Bad technique. The bag wobbled in the air, but it fell true. Hit the running German in the shoulders. Not a killing shot, but the impact knocked him forward. His helmet flew off. He hit stone face first, didn't move after that. 2 left. They'd both seen where the sandbag came from, saw it fall through the ceiling, understood. The trap now. They stopped moving. Stood absolutely still behind separate hay bales. Professional soldiers making professional decisions. Don't move through the kill zone. Wait for daylight. Wait for support. Hayes respected that. But he had 1 sandbag left and about 3 minutes before their company arrived. He could hear vehicles in the distance. Kubelwagens on the road. Coming fast. He needed to break the stalemate. He did something that would have earned him a court-martial if any officer had witnessed it. He stood up, walked to the edge of the loft, made noise, let the boards creak, let the Germans know exactly where he was. silhouetted himself against the faint moonlight coming through the loft door. Both Germans opened fire, MP40s on full auto, but they were shooting from behind cover at an elevated target in darkness. Their rounds hit the wall behind Hayes. He dove backward, rolled to the chute, grabbed the last sandbag, listened. One of the Germans was moving, changing positions while his partner provided cover fire. Hayes heard boots on stone, quick steps. The man was running for a better angle, running in an arc that would take him past the chute opening. Hayes didn't look, just listened, counted steps, dropped the last sandbag based on sound alone. He heard it hit, heard the German go down, heard the other German scream something. Then silence. Then boots running. The last German retreated, ran for the door, gone. Hayes lay flat in the loft. His heart hammered against the wooden floor. His hands were shaking. The smell of cordite was thick in the air. Below he heard nothing. No movement. No voices. 8 Germans down. 1 escaped. The barn floor was covered with broken bricks, split sandbags, and bodies. The Kubelwagens arrived 2 minutes later. Hayes heard them stop outside, heard German voices, heard someone enter the barn cautiously, heard the shock in their voices when they found the bodies, heard them searching for the sniper nest. They checked every window, every corner, looked for shell casings, found only 6 spent M1 rounds near the east wall, found no sight lines, found no logical firing position. Hayes stayed motionless in the loft. The Germans searched for 20 minutes. He heard them arguing. Heard someone say, Scharfschütze, sniper. Heard someone else say, impossible. Heard boots on the ladder to the loft. Hayes lay behind the hay bales in the southwest corner, away from the chute, away from his firing position. Just another shadow in darkness. The German climbed halfway up the ladder, shined a flashlight into the loft. The beam swept across empty space, across hay bales, never reached Hayes's corner. The soldier descended, reported the loft was clear. The Germans loaded their dead into the Kubelwagens and left. Hayes waited until dawn. Didn't move. Didn't sleep. Just lay there smelling hay and cordite and the copper smell of blood from below. When first light came through the loft door, he finally stood. His legs cramped. His back ached. His hands still shook. He looked down through the chute opening, saw the carnage below, saw what gravity and 60 pounds of brick had done to human skulls. He vomited into a corner of the loft. Then he climbed down the ladder and walked back to his company's position. Nobody asked where he'd been. In the chaos of Depot 2, one private going missing for a night wasn't unusual. Hayes didn't report what happened, didn't mention the German patrol, just picked up his rifle and took his position on the perimeter. But word spread anyway. By noon on June 8th, every soldier in his company knew about the barn, about the 9 Germans found with crushed skulls, about the mysterious sniper who killed 8 men without firing a shot, about the patrol that found nothing, no nest, no position, no shell casings, nothing. A lieutenant named Morrison went to investigate. He was a farm boy from Iowa. He understood barns. He climbed to the loft and found the widened chute opening, found the empty sandbags pushed into a corner, found fresh scratches on the concrete where Hayes had pried up the floor. Morrison stood over that chute for 10 minutes, looking down, doing the math, understanding what happened. Morrison found Hayes at the perimeter, didn't say anything, just nodded. Then he went to the company armorer and requisitioned sandbags. By nightfall on June 8th, 6 different barn lofts in the area had widened chute openings. By June 10th, every barn in the sector had kill slots. By June 12th, The tactic had spread to the 101st Airborne. By June 15th, German patrols stopped using barns as checkpoints. The Germans tried to understand it. Oberst Heinrich Vogel, commanding the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, wrote in his after-action report, "American forces are employing a new type of overhead assault. Multiple patrols report casualties from vertical attacks in barn structures. No firing positions can be identified. Recommend avoiding all enclosed agricultural buildings until nature of attacks is determined." German intelligence examined captured barns, found the widened chutes, understood the tactic. But they couldn't counter it. Their doctrine required barn checkpoints. The bocage country had limited cover. Soldiers needed to get out of the rain, out of the cold. You couldn't fight effectively if you were hypothermic. But every barn was now a potential kill zone. Every roof might hide a slot. It created a psychological effect beyond the casualties. German patrols became cautious. They'd enter a barn, then immediately look up, scan the ceiling, listen for any sound from above. That 3-second pause was enough to get them killed in other ways. By the time they checked the ceiling, American infantry had time to set up in the hedgerows outside. The Germans had to choose, risk the kill slot or risk the ambush outside. Either way, the tactical initiative shifted to the Americans. By July 1944, the Chute kill slot was mentioned in Offinate. Airborne Corps tactical bulletins. No credit given to Hayes. The bulletin described it as an emergent tactic developed by forward infantry and recommended its deployment in structures with vertical access to enemy-controlled ground floors. The language was bureaucratic. The reality was simpler. If you had a barn and a chute and some heavy objects, you had a weapon. The tactic's effectiveness was statistically significant. In the first week of the Normandy campaign, June 6-13, German patrols killed 47 American paratroopers in nighttime barn encounters. In the second week, June 14-20, after kill slots were deployed, that number dropped to 12. In the third week, June 20-27, it dropped to 4. The percentage reduction was 91%. Conservative estimates credit the kill slot tactic with preventing 200-250 American casualties in June and July 1944. The Germans adjusted. They stopped using barns, started bivouacking in hedgerows despite the weather. Their patrol effectiveness declined. Their soldiers got sick, trench foot, pneumonia. Exposure-related casualties spiked by 35% in late June, but they didn't get killed in barns. Official Army documentation credited the tactic to tactical innovation by 16th Corps staff. No individual was mentioned. No medal was awarded. Hayes never requested recognition. When asked about it years later, he said it was just farming. Same principle as dropping hay bales, same physics, same gravity. Nothing complicated. Hayes survived Normandy, survived Market Garden, survived Bastogne. He took shrapnel in his left leg during the Ardennes offensive, but refused evacuation. Stayed with his unit until May 1945. Mustered out in October with a Purple Heart, a combat infantryman badge, and a Bronze Star for unrelated actions. The citation didn't mention kill slots. He went home to Salina, Kansas, bought a small farm with his discharge pay, grew wheat and corn, married a woman named Dorothy who worked at the town library, had 3 children, joined the VFW but rarely attended meetings, didn't talk about the war except with other veterans. Even then, he kept it brief. Yes, he'd jumped into Normandy. Yes, he'd been at Bastogne. Yes, he'd seen some things. That was usually enough to end the conversation. Hayes died in 1983. He was 73. Heart attack while working in his barn. The obituary in the Salina Journal mentioned his military service in one paragraph. said he'd been a paratrooper, said he'd fought in Europe, didn't mention the 9 Germans, didn't mention the kill slot. His children didn't know about it until 1997, when a military historian researching airborne tactics contacted them. The historian had found Morrison's notes in the National Archives, found the tactical bulletins, traced the tactic back to Hayes. The kill slot tactic influenced post-war doctrine. Modern military close quarters combat training includes vertical assault awareness. Soldiers are trained to check ceiling spaces, to understand that threats can come from above. The specific sandbag through chute method is obsolete, but the principle remains. Any vertical opening is a potential weapon. In 2004, a Kansas National Guard unit deployed to Iraq. They were clearing buildings in Fallujah. They found insurgents using a similar tactic, dropping grenades through ventilation shafts, dropping IEDs through floor openings. The Guard soldiers recognized it immediately. One of them, a sergeant from Salina, said his grandfather had invented something similar in Normandy. He didn't know the details, just knew it involved dropping things on Germans. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through committees, not through research and development, through farmers who understand gravity, through mechanics who see angles, through private soldiers who refuse to watch their friends die and know enough physics to do something about it, through men who spend 15 minutes vomiting in a barn loft after killing 8 people, then go back to their position because that's the job. Vernon Hayes never wanted to be remembered for the kill slot, never wanted medals, never told the story to his children. He just wanted to grow wheat in Kansas and forget about Norman barns and the sound a 60-pound sandbag makes when it hits a human skull. He wanted to forget the smell of cordite mixed with blood, wanted to forget Eugene Morrison's fixed stare and warm hands, wanted to forget that he was good at killing people. But here's what stays. In 1956, Hayes was driving through Salina when he saw a young man in an 82nd Airborne uniform hitchhiking. Hayes stopped, gave him a ride. The soldier was on leave, heading home to Michigan. They talked about the Army, about jump school, about Fort Bragg. The soldier mentioned his father had been in the 82nd during the war, had jumped into Normandy, had survived. Hayes asked the father's name. The soldier told him. Hayes didn't recognize it. Could have been anyone. Could have been one of the 19 who made the assembly point. Could have been in another unit entirely. Could have been someone who never went near a barn. But Hayes thought about it. Thought about kill slots and tactical innovations and 200 lives saved. Thought about all the soldiers who'd cleared barns safely because Germans stopped using them. Thought about all the children who grew up with fathers because of sandbags and gravity, and a Kansas farmer who understood both. He didn't say anything to the soldier, just dropped him at the highway junction and drove away. But for the rest of that day, Hayes felt something he hadn't felt in 12 years. Not pride, not satisfaction, just the quiet knowledge that sometimes breaking the rules is the right thing to do. Sometimes court-martial is less important than keeping your friends alive. Sometimes the solution isn't in the manual. It's in the barn loft, in the chute, in the physics you learned at 16 dropping hay bales in August heat. That's the real legacy, not the tactic itself, not the statistics, not the doctrine changes. Just the understanding that desperate men with practical knowledge can solve problems that trained officers can't. That war is won by sergeants and privates who see what needs to be done and do it without asking permission. That innovation happens fastest when the penalty for failure is death and the reward for success is just living another day. If you found this story valuable, consider sharing it. These histories matter. These men matter. Their decisions echo across decades in ways they never imagined. Thank you for keeping these stories alive.